let's now turn to the role of global frameworks in driving national implementation. And I want to say welcome again to our moderator, Dr. Clara Camarasa. Joining her, Mr. Søren Lütken from Global ESCO Network, you already know him, and Mr. Keshav Ramkurun from Ministry of Energy, Mauritius, and Dr. Petrit Ahmeti from Kosovo Energy Efficiency Fund, and Dr. Bilal Düzgün from Ministry of Energy of Turkey. Please welcome our panelists with strong applause.
Thank you very much. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the role in international agreements in supranational regulation session. As we all know, international frameworks from the Paris Agreement to the EU directives are setting the pace and priorities for the climate and energy action. But we have to translate these national policies, local implementation, and actual investment flows. Doing so is not always straightforward. Today, we hear from a diverse panel of experts representing global, regional, and national perspectives. We'll explore how international agreements shape energy efficiency strategies, what the balance should be between the mandatory and voluntary frameworks, and how countries are navigating implementation, especially with tools like ESCOs. So let me briefly introduce you to our speakers. Søren Lütken, Senior Advisor at UNEP CCC, my dear colleague, and co-chair of the Global ESCO Network, Dr. Bilal Lütken, Director of Energy Efficiency and Environment at the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources of the Republic of Turkey, Dr. Petrit Ahmeti, Director of Operations at the Department of Kosovo Energy Efficiency Fund, and Mr. Keshav Ramkurun, Lead Engineer, Energy Efficiency Management Office in Mauritius. Thank you so much for being here. With that, let's begin our discussion. Søren, please help me frame the discussion with a look at the broader role of international agreements and their interaction with the national action. What do you believe is the role of international agreements and supranational regulation? How do you see mandatory also versus voluntary approaches helping in this?
Thank you, Clara. As you probably know by now, UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center is hosted by UNEP, and we're also hosting together with EVO, the Global ESCO Network. But UNEP, of course, is our mother organization based in Nairobi, and it's the natural host of a number of supranational agreements, and that's our bread and butter. You might know the Montreal Protocol. I'm mentioning that because it's hosted by UNEP. It's one of the most successful international agreements ever made. It's actually the one that makes sure that we haven't got a hole in our ozone layer and that we're still around today. So there's one, at least, effective supranational agreement that we're very proud of. We're also the host of the international or intergovernmental panel on climate change, which was established 35 years ago. And it's the one that started giving us the wake-up calls on climate change way back, long before anyone really thought it was important. We are not the host of the Paris Agreement or the Kyoto Protocol that goes under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and that Secretariat is in Bonn. They have the honor and challenge to implement that, but we consider at UNEP climate change as one of the pillars of our work. And a lot of the work that we do, of course, in Copenhagen Climate Center is directly focused on climate change. So it's natural for us to ask ourselves when we're working through these supranational agreements and that we keep seeing that we're not really meeting our targets, does it make any difference? What are, apart from the Montreal Protocol that I just mentioned, which is successful, we see a lot of international agreements that don't really produce the results, at least not the ones that we would like, and not fast enough. Is it worth anything? And I truly believe it is, and if I didn't believe that, I probably shouldn't be sitting here. So what do we get out of those supranational agreements? For the Paris Agreement, or the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, what we do have is, first of all, a target. We have 1.5 degrees, and I know that comes from the IPCC as a target that we are aiming to achieve, and without that, we didn't really, that it frames simply the discussion. We know what we're talking about. We need to limit our temperature increase to 1.5 degrees, and that is anchored in international agreements. So that's one thing. We're framing the discussion. We're also raising awareness. We do that through the COP process, the Conference of the Parties, where we meet once a year under the Framework Convention to agree on where we ought to be. And of course, that's one thing that we agree on where we ought to be, but the process that leads up to those Conference of the Parties, the number of governments that are involved, the number of people that are involved in delivering the input that is required by the process. We heard here this morning that we have the nationally determined contributions being submitted by countries, where countries are defining what they want to do, what they will contribute in order to achieve our 1.5 degree target. I mean, it's all governed by supranational agreement. And it activates governments and government employees in a process. And without it, I'm sure, I wonder how we would be. I can see a message from Yasmin. No? No message. So that's the process that is led by supranational agreement, which would not happen without it. So that activation, that awareness raising, if you will, among governments and government employees is created by supranational agreement. It also creates peer pressure, at least we hope that. I mean, there are what we call coalitions of the willing. I mean, it's not to make this a war room, but there are coalitions of countries that find themselves under the supranational agreements that move forward on initiatives. And we have some initiatives that are a bit more concrete than the supranational agreements. We have established a cool coalition under the climate change framework. We have, at some point, we had what we called the 3% club. I think that was, in fact, a number that was coming out of the IEA, that we need to increase the energy efficiency by 3% per year. And there were countries signing up to achieving that ambition. And we have another initiative set up by the UN General Secretary, the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, which also gathers countries under a target for achieving, well, contributions to reducing climate change. So just framing the entire issue is what the supranational agreements are for and what they're necessary for. So we can ask ourselves, is that enough? I remember my director 15 years ago said, when I came back from a COP and I was complaining that they're just talking and nothing comes out of this, we need action. I said, and his answer to me was that, yeah, but they're talking in a different way now. I said, well, that kind of, what kind of metric is that? I mean, can we get some action on the ground? I said, but that's really not what the supranational agreements are about in themselves to establish that action. It still relies on countries to do their part. I mean, they cannot force countries to do things they do not want to do. So when I say a coalition of the willing, there are, of course, also those that are unwilling, and we cannot really push them, and it's not the role of the agreements to well, push, yes, but it will never become mandatory. Now, but we can come back to mandatory and voluntary later, maybe. UNEP CCC has always been considered the implementation arm of UNEP. We are doing projects with countries, we are establishing implementation modalities, we are doing technology needs assessments, we are doing NDC action programs, we are doing a number of things which are directly consequences of the supranational agreements, and refer to that in the implementation of the NDCs, for instance. That's what we do together with donors and in-country action. And the Global ESCO network is an example of how we try to interpret the international agreements into something tangible and concrete. And we all know that energy efficiency is one of the most obvious and cost-efficient ways on achieving those targets that are set by the supranational agreements. So that's where we're comfortable in that, but we are still only promoters, and the Global ESCO network is promoting an idea. We're not implementing it, and we would never be the implementing agency. That still goes to responsibilities of countries and national actors. So, in conclusion, I mean, we are framing issues. We are not implementing, but the framing of issue is important. And the way, the way we talk about issues and making it more tangible also when the whole concept of climate change is regarded. That is where the supranational agreements play a decisive role.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Søren. Talking about framing, thank you so much for framing the context of this session. I'm now going to turn to Dr. Bilal for some questions. My first question is, are government's energy efficiency targets the most powerful driver of ESCO market growth? How much do clients' mandatory emissions reduction targets also influence demand for ESCO services based on your experience here in Turkey? And my last question would be, can clear national policies and audits create the right conditions for scaling ESCO investments? So many questions to you, but yeah, hopefully you can give us an insightful answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara Hanım. And I would like to express my gratitude to EODAR, Ivo, UNEP for organizing this beautiful event, bringing us together. And special thanks to Onur Bey, Pierre Longa, co-chair. We worked together 10 years before. Time flies. I am the Director of Energy Efficiency and Environment Department at the Ministry of Energy. We are the main coordinating body for energy efficiency studies across the country. As today's opening speeches, our Deputy Minister already mentioned that Turkey has a very ambitious target in terms of energy efficiency. We have a concrete target to invest more than 20 billion for the next 7 years. And it's worth to mention that after the pandemic era, we are one of the best performing countries among OECD members in terms of decrease in energy intensity. Of course, we want to reflect all these achievements into ESCO market. In Turkey, I can say that for the public-private sides, there is a mature or evolving market in EPC contracts. In today's your presentation, you already mentioned that nearly 20% of energy efficiency investments came through EPC contracts in private sector. Here I would like to emphasize that there is no legislative framework which regulates the private sector, which is good because business to business, they can freely make their contracts. But on the public side, general practice or the public procurement rule imposes only to consider initial purchase price. So this is one of the main limits. So 4 years ago, we brought a new regulation to allow public sector to implement EPC contracts. It allows to make long-term contracts and investments. This regulation called Communique on Implementation of EPCs in Public Sector. It allowed public sector to make up to 15 years contracts. So this was our first reform in the market to expand energy efficiency investment. But I have to confess that 4 years ago, when we published this communique, everything didn't become immediately a rose garden. I mean, at that time, there were no bids for tenders. So we made the second round of consultation to make a reform in the market. We took very good insight from EBRD World Bank team to revise our legislation. So here what we saw, two main changes. One of them is we introduce an inflation adjustment. Unfortunately, after the pandemic era, Turkey faces very high inflation, which affects directly to interest rates. So we introduced inflation adjustment for energy prices. At first design, energy prices were taken as constant, which truly affects the investment and savings. Then the second revision was about the lower bound of investment levels. So we lowered the required investment amount, decreased from 2 Turkish million lira to 1 million Turkish lira. It's equivalent to nearly less than $30,000. So these were two main changes in the let's say, regulation. So far what we saw is in the public side, there are now best practices exist not only the big cities, but also from eastern part of Turkey to western part of Turkey. Maybe it's worth to mention that international collaboration or international legislation quite important. While we were preparing our legislation, we have benefited from legislation from USA, European countries, UK, Australia, Canada, even in China. Of course, copy and paste just doesn't work, so you have to make a kind of tailored design. But you know something while you are walking on the way. So it's a progression. This is one side of the coin, or one of the main pillars. The other thing I would like to mention, the technical capacity. So to implement EPC contracts, you require huge technical capacity because it's a kind of psychology. Everyone wants to stay in their safety zone. General practice is just to look at initial price, and we are introducing new, let's say, terminologies, net present values, shared, guaranteed, savings, etc. So these are very quite new for non-engineers or people working as a civil servant in the public side. But in the last 4 years, we conducted a series of webinars, seminars, training programs. I would like to also mention that before making reforms in the markets, in the ministry, myself and my colleagues took training program of CMVP, passed the exam. Then we created a national training program in Turkey. So far, more than 100 engineers are trained and certified. So capacity is increasing. So legislation is one side, one pillar, let's say. Technical capacity is the second pillar. The finance, the most important, as you mentioned in your presentation. Maybe in the second round we can mention about that. But the finance would be the third pillar of our, let's say, work.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing this experience, Dr. Vidal. And it's impressive to see all the great work you've been doing to revise the regulation, to get informed from the best practices, to conduct consultations with the population to really make sure that it's tailored to the local context. Because as you said, there's no one bullet for every policy. You need to study the market. You need to understand, is there inflation, as you were mentioning, for instance? Is there not? How can we overcome all these different barriers? So excellent work. That's really good to hear, and I think it's a great example to many of the people that are today with us in different countries, markets, and I think it's really inspiring. Also great to hear that you're also having a training and capacity of the different stakeholders to make sure that they are able to implement all of the different measures that you intend to with the updated regulations. So congratulations on that, and thank you for sharing. And now move on to Dr. Petrit from Kosovo. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to ask you, from your side, from your experience in Kosovo, how are international agreements and EU regulatory frameworks influencing Kosovo's national energy efficiency approach? And within that also, what challenges arise when applying supranational, as we were mentioning with Søren as well, standards locally? And how voluntary is Kosovo aligning with the EU requirements? Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. First of all, on behalf of Kosovo team, especially Kosovo Energy Efficiency Fund, I would like to thank you for inviting us and including us in this panel. We are very honored. I will give just a couple of facts about Kosovo for the colleagues that might not have. Kosovo is a relatively young country, gained the independence in 2008. It's a small country with only 1.8 million inhabitants, so if we discuss about numbers, then please have this in consideration. Being a young country means that you have to develop and draft several laws and regulations from the scratch, which means that EU regulatory framework was our guidance, especially in energy efficiency means, which was transposed, and then we were able to draft and approve law on energy efficiency in Kosovo, which is one big step, which currently is under revision again because of the changes and revision in directive, EED. And afterwards, we were able also to approve and have the law on building energy performance. These two laws helped us to create our road towards energy efficiency in buildings. And the law for energy efficiency was the platform based on which we created our fund, which is a public fund named Kosovo Energy Efficiency Fund. Currently, we don't have ESCOs in Kosovo because of some, let's say, legislative issues. So fund in Kosovo acts as an ESCO. In terms of building energy efficiency or energy performance, we were able to clarify, based on the EPBD, we were able to clarify all our steps towards increasing the energy performance in buildings, such as applying the energy audit of buildings, inspection of HVAC systems in our building stocks in public sector, and also the EPC, but not the energy performance contracts, but certification of buildings. So in this way, we were able to create our national registry, which is an online platform through which all the procedures for producing EPCs for buildings and energy audit reports will go through this platform, which will be a way of controlling the quality of these procedures and also the reporting from all stakeholders which implement retrofitting in their buildings, which we usually do as KIEF, Kosovo Energy Efficiency Fund. So I can surely say that the influence was very positive in our context in Kosovo because we started from the scratch using the EU regulatory framework. As for the challenges in Kosovo, knowing that it's a small country, we have mostly financial constraints because this is a robust process to transpose EU directives in local context in Kosovo. So financially, we are struggling to do it from the first steps to the end because we are able to transpose the directives, but then enforcing them on field, we are lacking of, let's say, trained professionals to do so. So the second, let's say, challenge is lack of trained professionals in specific phases, mostly in energy auditing, the EPC issuance, and then implementation on field, which means we don't have certified companies to implement retrofitting to increase the energy efficiency or the energy performance in buildings. In terms of our volunteer activity, I can say that Kosovo, for some years now, is very committed voluntarily to align with EU targets, starting from our National Energy and Climate Plan, which is now finalized but is waiting for approval in our government. This national plan outlines all our objectives, all our targets, and the measures that will be taken in future, near, medium, and in future. So in this way, we were ensuring that all the targets are aligned with energy community targets in 2030 and also to targets foreseen in Paris Agreement. So our plan, National Energy and Climate Plan, will be then sent to the energy community for any comments to ensure that we are totally aligned with these targets before approving that in our government. So I guess these are the answers to the questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Petrit. And it's impressive also, once again, to see such a young, small country advancing in the energy efficiency space, but in particular also in the ESCOs, and how you're trying from the fund side as well to overcome some of the financial and capacity building or knowledge requirements needed from your side. So congratulations again, and I hope this is once again another inspiring story for the audience here today. I'm now going to move on to Mr. Keshav from Mauritius. Mr. Keshav, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Clara.
In Mauritius, we have a very particular case, and it's a particularly interesting case, I think, because you're representing ESCO, right? It's a great example of an island also that's having certain challenges in terms of increased cooling demand and other energy demand. So I think it's a great example to present to you today, in case there's any other seats in the audience. My first question to you: how does Energy Efficiency Management Office, or EMO as we call it, connect national implementation with the global commitments? That would be my first question. And then how is energy efficiency translated into policies and ESCOs in particular? How is this cooling demand that we just mentioned addressed within all of these aspects, and how are ESCOs helping to address this increase in cooling demand that is becoming a real challenge for Mauritius and many other regions in the world, as we know? And could you also share some insights into the key investment risk and de-risking tools you're developing, such as the recent project, MAF project we're supporting from UNEP CCC on ESCOs? Over to you, Mr. Risha.
Thank you, Clara, for this excellent opportunity to be part of this global ESCO symposium. So as you mentioned, Mauritius, as a small island developing state, contributes only about 0.01% of the global GHG emissions. And yet our government is determined to demonstrate our strong commitment into achieving the global climate action targets. And our NDCs reflect this ambition, with targets including 40% of GHG emissions reduction by 2030. And within the energy sector, we are aiming for a significant increase in renewable energy by up to 60% in our electricity mix, and the complete phase-out of coal by 2030, and a 10% improvement in energy efficiency within the same time frame. In essence, the Energy Efficiency Management Office, the EMO, acts as the operational arm of the government, which is going to take Mauritius' global climate commitments, particularly the NDC energy efficiency targets, and translate them into tangible policies, regulations, and programs at national level. And how are we going to do this? Is, well, to ensure the implementation of these policies, the government enacted the Energy Efficiency Act in 2011, through which the EMO, as we call it, establishes the necessary regulatory frameworks, be it for mandatory energy labeling of appliances, the minimum energy performance standards, and mandatory energy audits for large energy consumers, and also developing regulations for energy performance contracting. These regulations provide the legal and operational basis for achieving energy efficiency gains. Let's take, for example, the mandatory energy audits. We have a target is to conduct at least 240 energy audits by 2030, energy audits in large energy consumers. And to date, around 50 energy audits have already been completed. And we have identified the energy saving potentials is huge, around 78 gigawatts of savings per year. It doesn't mean a lot for lots of countries, but Mauritius, our electricity production per year, it's around 2,600 gigawatts per year. And this energy saving represents around 236 million rupees of Mauritian rupees of savings, which translate into like 5.2 million USD per year. And these energy saving potential have a GHG emissions reduction of 74 kilotons of CO2 per year. And we believe that ESCOs can play a crucial role in implementing energy efficiency projects and unlock this energy saving potential. To foster the growth of ESCO market, we are implementing measures such as developing a legal and regulatory framework for energy performance contracting. And we are working towards providing financial support in the form of a de-risking mechanism for ESCOs and capacity building programs for ESCOs, awareness campaigns linking ESCOs and clients at the national level, facilitating access to public sector projects, and also establishing a ESCO accreditation system. This integrated approach aims to establish an enabling environment for the ESCO market in Mauritius, and which will deliver the tangible energy savings and contribute in achieving the country's energy efficiency goals. And as you rightly mentioned, the cooling demand, we've been facing quite a few challenges recently. Mauritius, as many other tropical island states, have been experiencing serious challenges to meet the growing electricity demand driven by prolonged hot weather conditions coupled with high humidity levels. And what we have seen is the import figures for air conditioners in Mauritius have doubled in 2024, increasing from 50,000 units in 2023 up to 100,000 units in 2024.
Okay.
So you can imagine the significant impact of these additional air conditioners have on the electricity grid. So what the government has done is we have introduced a minimum energy performance standards for air conditioners as of cooling capacity less than 12 kilowatts, basically for domestic sector, effective from 1st March of 2025. This aims to reduce the influx of energy-intensive air conditioners and allow only energy-efficient air conditioners on the local market. We have also noticed a significant shift in the peak electricity demand period. Previously, it was during the day, around 1 to 2 in the afternoon. Now it's during the night, at around 6:30 up to 9, and it's quite constant. That's where the electricity demand is met mostly by fossil fuel power plants. So the government is considering to apply the time of use tariff for the domestic sector just to alleviate the demand for on the electricity grid during this peak period. And I believe the role of ESCOs are even more crucial at this point to allow Mauritius to face this challenge to the energy security. And especially in the deployment of efficient cooling solutions, be it in terms of accelerating the adoption of efficient chillers, VRV systems, building insulation solutions, chiller plant optimization and operations, integration of RE solutions with chillers, and heat recovery solutions, and also ESCO's, the cooling as a service solution promoted by ESCO's for the commercial sector. In short, the ESCOs have the potential to develop the resilience of the national grid. And in terms of key investment risk and the de-risking tools, what with UNEP CCC, what we identified as the primary investment risk that can hinder the ESCO market is the technical risk in energy performance contracting, the savings uncertainty, I mean, where the actual savings achieved are much lower than the projected savings due to poor baselines, behavioral change, poor performance of the installed equipment, and also we have the measurement and verification challenges, where without an accurate method of measuring and verifying the energy savings, there can be dispute challenges between the ESCOs and the clients. And to mitigate these risks, the EMO is working towards developing a framework for energy performance contracting with the consultancy firm Deloitte. And the activities under this framework is to address the technical risk with ESCOs through standardized energy performance contract templates, robust measurement and verification protocols are being developed, and this will increase the transparency and reduce disputes over savings. And also we are working towards having a ESCO accreditation and certification. And another risk, the financial risk associated with ESCOs. I mean, ESCO projects often require high upfront investment costs be it in design, in energy audits, in design, purchase of equipment and installation. ESCOs, especially the smaller ESCOs, often face difficulties in accessing affordable financing from commercial banks due to the perceived risk of lack of collateral and understanding of the ESCO business model by the commercial banks. And also the return on investment for energy efficiency projects seems to take longer, exposing the ESCOs to financial risk over a long time. And to address this financial risk, the EMO, with the collaboration of UNEP CCC, is working on a project proposal already been submitted to the Mitigation Action Facility for a guarantee fund that will provide the partial guarantees to commercial banks lending to ESCOs and reducing the perceived risk of default. And I will talk about the Mitigation Action Facility supported ESCO market. Indeed, the Mitigation Action Facility is currently funding the detailed preparation phase for the project de-risking facility for energy performance contracting in Mauritius. The main objective of this project is to establish a guarantee fund to encourage commercial banks in Mauritius to provide loans to ESCOs for energy efficiency projects being implemented through energy performance contracting. And the implementing partners for this project is UNEP CCC, who are providing the technical expertise and the support.
Federico and Søren, yes.
Yeah. Federico and Søren, we thank you for that. And also Capital Asset Management, which is a subsidiary company of the State Investment Corporation, the investment arm of the company, of the government, I would say, who are expected to administer this guarantee fund, and of course the EMO, with the national body for regulator for energy efficiency in Mauritius. So this guarantee fund is projected to lead to the implementation of at least 95 projects within the first 5 years, and resulting in a projected jet fuel emission reductions of 210 kilotons of CO2. This represents a substantial contribution to Mauritius NDC targets of 10% energy efficiency improvement. So by addressing these technical and financial barriers, this project is aiming to build a conducive environment for ESCO operations and encouraging the growth of the existing ESCO companies in Mauritius, and also allow new players to get into the ESCO market. And that's it. Over to you, Clara.
Thank you so much, Kishef. I think that's a really interesting and relevant case to showcase to the audience. One of the key aspects, or one of the key messages that I extract, is the importance of having ESCO market in place, not only for the current context and current challenges, but the challenges that are at a very fast pace coming towards us in terms of the climate change impacts, right? We're seeing there's from one year to the other, doubling of the air conditioning deployment, something that is unsustainable for the electricity system. Exactly. Having had already a kind of, if not matured, but prematured development of the ESCO market has helped now to make sure that the ESCOs are utilized as an instrument to really leverage and improve the efficiency, and thereby try to improve the current challenge in terms of increased cooling needs. So I think that's, for me, one of the key takeaways of the Mauritius case, and that hopefully we also extract for the rest of the audience here. Another really relevant aspect, I think, is the de-risking facility that you're building together with our colleagues. I think that's it's going to be, with Federico's great work and Søren's, it's going to be an excellent case study on how we can really create this de-risking mechanism and upscale the ESCO market. And we'll be very happy to showcase. I'm sure Federico can, and yourself, Kishef and Søren, can showcase all of the great results if not the next symposium, hopefully soon enough. So that's an excellent development, and we're really looking forward to progress on that front. And now that we've heard individual reflections, I'd like to bring all the panelists into a short comparative dialogue. And we don't have much time, and I really would like to reserve at least 10 minutes for Q&A. I would like to make this panel a bit interactive, if possible. You've been very patiently sitting and listening in, but I think it's time for you to also share your thoughts and comments and questions. So very quickly, and maybe I just ask one or two of you to answer to this question. What would you say would be the common institutional or regulatory challenges that you see when translating these supranational goals into national implementation? And are there elements within the international frameworks, be it targets, funding models, timelines, whatever you consider, that particularly help or hinder progress on the ground? So any volunteers? I'm going to ask one or two only. We don't have that much time left. Is it okay? Would you like to? Yeah? Whoever. Yes,
okay,
please.
Thank you. So in our case, in Kosovo, in our context, the main challenge will be decarbonization. Since Kosovo power generation is based 90% on fossil fuel and lignite, and this will cause many difficulties to Kosovo in terms of prices, since when the carbon taxes will be applied in Kosovo, the price will rise immediately, and this will have economical problems in Kosovo, or economical, let's say, chain effects. Or if Kosovo starts importing energy from countries that have lower carbon emission, then the market prices are much higher than our prices, internal prices in Kosovo. So this will be the main challenge for our case. The other obstacle in Kosovo is the harmonization of regulations, since we have, for example, the prosumer regulation, which sets the maximum allowed energy productions per individual building. And on the other hand, we are working with other regulations and transposing EU directives which set the minimum required from renewables. So in this case, we have a clash between regulations which needs to be harmonized in a very detailed way, so we don't have these obstacles to implement or transpose the directives, EU directives.
So as I hear some challenges sometimes to really bring the supranational international context, but hopefully nothing that cannot be overcome, and hopefully something that you can share again in the next symposium, how it's evolving and how you overcame this barrier. I think based on all the barriers you've already and challenges you've already overcome, I'm sure this will be yet another one, but still something to consider and something to take into consideration when really aligning and harmonizing, as you said, the supranational to the national commitments, and from there, the implementation. Thank you very much for this response. We have a couple of minutes. Would you like to?
I can contribute with a general assessment. I mean, not specific for Turkey, but very basic, maybe example. Getting everyone on the same page is quite difficult. I mean, to support EPC contracts in parallel, we brought an obligation for public buildings to save energy, like 15% in 2019 for the next 5 years.
Okay.
So between 2019 and 2023, we said public buildings obliged to save 15%, but at that time, many people argued that it's impossible.
Right.
So you have to convince people. What we saw after the implementation of this period, general practices, you can reach 40% savings. In one cycle, what we saw is more than 80% savings achieved. So it requires some time to, let's say, or implement a international best practices into national practices. In your second question, what would be the supportive for international collaboration? I believe tax reliefs or customs exemption would be supportive. And your question continues what was limiting. Actually, reaching all these tax benefits are quite complex. So this is the limiting side of the issue.
Brilliant. Thank you for bringing specific examples of financial incentives that the government can implement. Yet again, of course, the implementation of such incentives are not always that easy, but indeed effective and worthwhile implementing, or at least exploring. Thank you very much for these answers. And now we have 12 minutes. 12 minutes that I would like to hand over to the audience in case of any comments, questions that you would like to pose in relation to this topic, or in particular to any case of the ones presented in this panel. Any thoughts, comments? I see one hand here. Yes, please. There's a mic coming your way.
Hi, Seda from the Danish Consulate. Thank you so much for the panel so far. And my question is to Bilal Bey. I think in the global ESCO report, which is just launched today, there are like, it says that there are around 45 ESCO projects in Turkey. And are they all like energy efficiency in the public buildings related with KABE, or are there any other more innovative models? Can you give some examples, if any? Thank you.
I can say that actually both private side and public side, they have both EPC contracts. For public sites, I can give example, but I don't want to intervene the session with Esra Hanım. She will explain a lot in practices in the public sector. And private side, Onur Bey is the guru, so he is the, I think you are the first ESCO company in Turkey. So I can say that majority of them in private sector, but in public sites, we have a growing, let's say, market, and we have very good examples. more detail, I don't want to lose the last guesses, so I will leave floor to Esra Hanım for the next panel.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the question. I think it's that's part of what we want to prompt with the market report, is of course give a global picture, but then spark the interest in what's really happening in the different markets and deep dive on that reference. And what we also aim to, I can say, responding to the question from our side as well, what we're aiming at is to improve the data collection more and more every year, and try to provide also that level of granularity that you're also looking for. So hopefully in the next market report, you'll have that information at hand. We'll make sure of that. Thank you so much for your question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Mehdi Benjeloun from the private Super ESCO in Morocco. I have a question. We heard about accreditation of ESCOs. Is it really necessary? And what is the criteria that you will take into account to accredit such ESCOs? Thank you.
If I may.
Yes, please.
I think the question is addressed here. Thank you. What I would say, accreditation for ESCOs is, we believe it will be important to build up confidence for the client perspective, for linking up with ESCO companies and client, and also providing the technical assurance to the client that the ESCO will be able to meet these savings, these projected savings in a way. And the criteria, it hasn't been developed yet, but we had this discussion with Søren and Federico. We believe it will be important for the ESCO companies to have a measurement and verification expert in their team, which will be going to, in a way, guarantee the savings in the energy performance contracts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. We have another question, and while the microphone, yet two more questions, that's excellent. While the microphone heads your way, I want to take the opportunity to share that Federico, who's together with Søren leading this project, will be happy to follow up on any question. And I take the opportunity to acknowledge all the amazing work that Federico has been doing for this symposium behind, from every angle, as well as Jasmine. So I want to make sure you also have the spotlight, of course. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us information. I want to know, we are from the Ministry of Economy and Finance from Uzbekistan. I want to ask this question and listen to your opinion. What it's preferred? It's Super ESCO is like a regulatory agency or the implementation agency. Why I'm asking? For example, for Kosovo, it's a fund. It's working like Super ESCO and have the funding, which is the main issue for the ESCO companies. But guidelines, regulatory documents, etc. It's a main opportunity to make ESCO market more profitable. Right. So what is a better way? Is how to say, Super ESCO should be like funding agency or regulatory agency? That's an excellent question. Thank you so much for posing that. And we acknowledge that Uzbekistan has been recently very interested in ESCOs. So we're really happy to have you today on board and share, not only listening, but also sharing insights. Would you like to pick that up, Søren, or even Federico, or any of the panelists for that matter?
Søren.
I think that's a difficult question. Without a firm answer also. I think it depends on the context. Well, first of all, the question is whether the super ESCO is supposed to work in the public sector or the private sector. So assuming it's the public sector, again, context dependent, because in some countries, financing of public sector projects is essential for implementing them. The public sector does not have the financing, so it's looking for other options for financing. Then shifting the responsibility to the ESCOs, that means the super ESCO does not have the financing, it has a framing capacity, but requires financing from a third party. But we also see in many countries where public sector entities do not require financing, in fact has access to cheaper financing than the ESCOs would ever have. In the US, which is the biggest market, one of the biggest markets at least, the public sector is financing its own, well, on its own, but the ESCOs come in and provide the service on an energy performance contract basis. So again, it's context dependent. If the public sector requires financing, you will be shifting the financing responsibility to the ESCOs, but then you are faced with another challenge, which is how does the ESCO raise the financing to help out the public sector? So I think I will leave it there, because but I'll be very happy to discuss it further with you.
Thank you. Federico, do you want to follow up? Okay. If I may add also, very much agreed with what Søren said. It's very context specific. And in the case of Uzbekistan, you have a very particular context, which maybe other countries don't have, which is that you also have your energy fund. That is a great opportunity that I believe it's hosted in the Ministry of Energy, right? The energy fund. So you do have currently a fund for energy purposes, which could be potentially repurposed for, or partially at least, of the fund utilized for energy efficiency matters, and for that sake also support the ESCO market financing. But as Søren said, it has to be, and we'll be very happy to do that from the UNEP CCC side, as you already know, to help study what would be the best setup in the context of Uzbekistan, take into consideration also other ministries that are involved, be it the Ministry of Energy in this case, or even the Ministry of Environment. So that's something that we're very happy to discuss or follow up and have a proper in-depth study of what would be the best solution for the case in the context of Uzbekistan. Thank you very much for that question. That's an excellent question. Any other questions, comments? Yes, please.
I'm Jabbar Chiki. I'm the chairman of NSF Capital, Luxembourg-based. I've got two comments. One, why do you talk always about risk? When a banker, and I'm an investment banker, so I don't know how a commercial bank works. But when a banker says it's risky, he hasn't done his work, or he hasn't understood it, because those guys as well are lazy. Now, JP Morgan, the biggest financier in the world, which was called the railroad baron, do you think that he had a de-risking mechanism? No. He had shareholders who took the risk. He arranged everything. He actually even bailed out in 1929 the New York Stock Exchange.
Right.
So we are sitting here in something which we all know. It makes money. We just need to have an honest business model.
Right.
Any lending proposition has got two key tenets: ability to pay and willingness to pay. And now I'm coming to Keshav, and one of my partners in Luxembourg is going to hate me for this. He's the chairman of one of your largest energy providers. Why don't you use the same system which Carlos so well spoke about? And the Spaniards, they have been doing this very, very well. They copied the French system, ironed out all the problems, and now they've got a wonderful white certificate system. why don't you turn around and use this great invention of white certificates and tell the energy supplier, listen, buddy, why don't you support the system?
Well, for the case of Mauritius, we have only one energy supplier. It's a government-owned company. So it is still... I'm sorry?
And you have got a big private one?
No, only one energy supplier in Mauritius. Yeah. So why we are going forward with this de-risking facility is we do, the banks, they do have the money, but they lack the clear understanding of how energy efficiency works. And what we have seen is they are more prone to invest into renewable energy projects, which is more viable, like more C, and whereas for energy efficiency projects, things have not been picking up. And we need the implementations of those energy audits we have been doing. And as I mentioned, there's a huge potential. So having the de-risking facility in place and also the regulatory framework for energy performance contracting will allow, what we believe will allow the implementation of energy efficiency projects and which will allow us to meet our climate goal targets of 10% energy efficiency by 2030. So that's why we are coming forward with the mitigation action facility for this de-risking mechanism. That's just to build up the, so we want to show the companies, like the private sector companies, we have the solutions, energy performance contracting, we have the de-risking facility, and now it's up to you to implement those energy efficiency projects. It's, and also we are facing quite an economic difficulties for the time being. So the government won't be able to inject more money into the private sector for the implementation of energy efficiency projects. They have other priorities, the increasing debt level of the country. So we believe the de-risking facility will be the best solutions for Mauritius.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sava, for this investor side perspective and bringing some also insights into how an investor also thinks. And thank you, Keshet, for bringing the perspective of the response from the Mauritius side. I was feeling very proud that we almost made it on time. We're just over time, but before we close, I'm going to hand over to Søren as well.
Just with two remarks. One to Chapa. If you're intrigued by Chapa's question, we actually have a feature article in the Global ESCO Market Analysis that just came out this morning by Chapa, where he's describing an idea based on the white certificates, a financing model that might be replicable. But it's an interesting model. I just want to highlight there is an explanation for Chapa's question. He has thought it out somehow. So the other quick remark, and just maybe closing on, you mentioned before, how do we move from supranational level to national level. You might remember that once we had a Kyoto Protocol, it was considered a top-down model where there was a sort of an agreement that we have to comply with set targets, but way before the expiry of the Kyoto Protocol, we started discussing what's coming after this. What is the post-Kyoto regime that we're looking for? And in that discussion, there was a question whether, do we want another top-down model, sort of a regulatory model with set targets, or do we want to have a bottom-up model instead, which is more voluntary? And the question was, do we want to have a top-down target which ideally meets our goal, but which nobody is going to implement? Or do we want to have a voluntary model which then would not achieve our ultimate goal, but which everybody would comply with? We ended up with the Paris Agreement, which is the latter, would accept that we don't comply with that one either, so we have a voluntary goal that nobody complies with. But ideally, we want to have this implemented in national context. And the reason why we want to have that in national context is that the only place where we can enforce those agreements is at the national level. Unfortunately, what we see at the national level as well is also we have voluntary implementation. And when we're looking at energy efficiency, we have a lot of, maybe some countries move to the point where we have mandatory energy audit. There are very, very few countries that have the courage to say we also have mandatory implementation. So we still think we have the luxury of saying, well, we think you should do this, but if you don't, it's also fine. So I would challenge the policymakers here and say, well, let's move from this voluntary idea. When it's nice to have targets, we need to have mandatory implementation with enforcement. And without that, all these ideas are great, but they will never achieve what we need to achieve.
I think that's, on that note, I think we could have not summarized the conclusions of this session any better. So on that note, I'm going to thank the panelists for your time and your sharing your experience today, but also the audience for being part of this session. And we look forward to continuing the discussion beyond this session. I think we're now moving to the lunch break, right? Is that correct?
I should
so thank you for your attention. Thank you for your interest and patience. Thank you.